Hello, everybody. Welcome to Film Family. And today we are going to be reviewing The Irishman. So, yeah, unfortunately, Prince didn't get to see it with us. There's only one showtime, and we had to kind of find our way in, squeezed our way through. But yeah, this has been my most anticipated film of the year ever since I heard it was coming out this year. They revealed the release date like pretty recently, actually. So I was like, is it even going to come out this year? But yeah, like I knew this was going to be one of the best films of the year. I was like, can Scorsese deliver it? Absolutely, because he's never really done a bad movie. And yeah, this movie is just further proof that Martin Scorsese, and this is my genuine opinion, is probably the greatest filmmaker of who's ever lived. And this is just one of those things where I just got happy every second I was watching this movie because A, not only was it a great film, but B, it was kind of like in a movie when you have this old character coming out of retirement, but he wasn't even retired, but comes out of retirement and like beats up all the old, like the new kids, and he's like, let me show you how I do it. It was literally Martin Scorsese and all these old 70-year-old people making this movie that's better than like all the movies that the 30 and 40-year-olds and 20-year-olds are making, because that's just how much of an expert he is. The movie is immaculate in its craftsmanship and its script and its acting and its every possible level. It is a fantastic film. It is one of the best movies of the year, maybe one of the best movies of the decade.
Wow. And it's a long movie too.
It's long.
Yeah. I had heard about it, obviously. You were super, super excited about it always. And I was more concerned if it was going to live up for you. And I remember asking you, I'm like, what's your confidence level? Is this going to live up to your hype? And you said, definitely. So you've never wavered. I appreciate that, and I loved it. I actually absolutely loved it. It made me want to see all his movies again, to revisit them. I haven't seen Raging Bull or Taxi Driver. I haven't seen those movies yet. So I am going back to Marty school, and I just really enjoy him as a filmmaker. You see the appreciation, but you also, there was something about just seeing the classic actors again and seeing them, and it's almost like they didn't skip a beat. It's like a great, performance.
For Al Pacino and De Niro, people who have gotten so scrutinized for their careers this decade and sort of last decade too, for them to come out of here and drop two of the best performances of the year, actually two of the best performances in this decade again, and just kind of do it like, but it was like where you've done all these bad movies and people said you lost it. How did you do this? It shows a certain level of talent. Now, I'm not going to talk about their careers, what makes them choose movies like, Jack and Jill or Dirty Grandpa, but this is these people saying, hey, I can still do this on, any day of the week in my sleep because I'm just that good. They're both Oscar winners. And for Joe Pesci, who actually hasn't acted in a movie in like, I don't know how many years. It's been like almost 2 decades or over 2 decades. For him to just come out and be like, yeah, I can still do this. It shows a level of talent that is almost non-present in basically like 98% of Hollywood, just people in general, from directors to screenwriters and all these other people. And for those people to do such a great job, for Harvey Keitel, Jesse Plemons, Stephen Graham, and like Ray Romano and all those people to be like your second unit, that's like when your basketball team's starting, that their bench is better than every other team's starting five. That's your backups. Yeah. Like this movie's acting is a ridiculous level of fantastic, and the direction's brilliant, the screenplay's brilliant. I mean, I don't even know where to start because it's an epic. It is a mob crime epic. It spans like I think 4 or 5 decades, and it just goes through just American history in general. But it does it in such an interesting and engaging way that you never get tired. I never once thought I was gonna fall asleep in this movie that's 3.5 hours, and it just did nothing to not impress me. It was just, it would constantly impress me. And for a dude who's dropped over like 25 movies and has been doing this and has been doing it a fantastic job for decades, for him to just keep topping himself and just doing an impressive job is something that almost no other director can say they've even come close to.
So do you think this is his masterpiece or opus?
But here's the thing. With a director like Scorsese, the only other director I will say this with is Steven Spielberg. Even Stanley Kubrick I won't say this with, which is probably extremely hot take. I'm going to get some hate for that. The only other director that can do this and drop multiple masterpieces and just do it like they're just eating lunch, it is Scorsese and Spielberg. And this is not just his masterpiece, it's just another masterpiece. He's dropped 2 of the best films every decade since the 70s. He's been doing that. and he has been doing it well, and he's been doing it consistently. And it's the reason I pick him as a GOAT, because somebody like Stanley Kubrick put out Shining and Full Metal Jacket. It took 7 years to do that. Scorsese does movies like back-to-back years, back-to-back, decades, and just never stop. He's never stopped. He's never taken, day. The most years he's taken off is 3, and that's just because some of these movies are long. And it's like Wolf of Wall Street came out in 2013. Silence came out in 2016. This movie came out in 2019. All those movies are like 3 hours or over 3 hours, and are all like brilliant films. That's not to mention Shutter Island and Hugo, or in the previous decades, The Departed and Aviator, or Casino and Goodfellas, or Raging Bull and the King of Comedy, or Taxi. It's like, how do you even do that much? The only person who's able to do that, and even he has not kept up his level of consistency, is Steven Spielberg. And for Scorsese to be able to do this, I am speechless at this point, because, like you said, I think it is an opus, but I think what this movie reminds me of is what Quentin Tarantino said about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like, this is my last thing. Even if I have things after this, they will be an epilogue. This is the conclusion of the TV show that is my career, but these movies after will be my epilogue. Whatever Scorsese does after this, and I'm sure he plans to keep making movies. I hope he will keep making movies until he leaves this planet, and I hope that's not, for the longest time possible. And, he dropped this movie, which, with these actors who he's helped build their careers, and they've helped, build his career. And he's just said, I don't care how old I am. I don't care what people are doing. I'm just going to drop another masterpiece. And he's kind of, I feel like, a signature on his career. And so anything after this, I'm sure will be fantastic, because he's Scorsese. It will be sort of an epilogue to this conclusion.
Nice. I can't disagree with anything you're saying. I mean, this Scorsese is a director that, was born to be a director. Yes. And you see, you cut him and film pours out of him, literally, and education and knowledge. And so I was just really happy, because I was a little worried about the runtime of 3 hours and 30 minutes when you wanted to see this. And you're like, oh, I want to see it we saw it in the theater. Yeah. But then the excitement of everyone as well. And it was incredible to see it that way, to see it on,
I mean, there's few names that, like, because nowadays, Scorsese, I guess, talked about this too, like, with the, emergence and success of superhero films, just Hollywood blockbusters in general, and sort of becoming this formulaic, kind of just rinse and repeat cycle of just putting them out. And even me, who loves Marvel movies and superhero movies, I can see their repetitiveness and, whatever. But there's very few names that can make a crowd excited that aren't, with these IP movies. Like, I could probably name it on one hand, like Scorsese, maybe Spielberg, definitely Tarantino, I don't know, maybe Nolan, and just a couple of people who can actually excite a crowd and can make films that are as entertaining, engaging, smart, just thoughtfully put together, just in terms of like craftsmanship, that are as good as Scorsese, and there's very few people who can do that and, kind of make people still excited, because I think people are going to love this movie. And, even the fact that he's, who's such an ancient kind of cinephile and loves classics, he still calls movies pictures. He releases this movie on Netflix. Now, I know that was sort of a budgeting thing, but I can't help but think to myself, it is also sort of a statement for him to make, be like, oh yeah, well, no matter how much you guys think you're gonna change cinema, I'm still gonna drop a movie. But you know what? I'm gonna put it on Netflix because I want to. And this movie also, and for all my money, best director, I think it deserves. The only other person I think who could be up to deserve that is Bong Joon-ho for Parasite, and I don't think he does as good of a job. And I think this movie should win Best Picture. And I'm not just saying that because I like the movie. I don't think there's been a better film this year in terms of because the Best Picture does have a certain kind of connotation of what it needs and what it deserves. And there's been plenty of bad Best Picture winners, but this movie definitely is probably my pick for a lot of Oscars.
What I loved about this movie as well, and we're not going into spoilers, which is great, is the fact that it's watching this movie and watching 3.5 hours. It didn't feel like that to me. I honestly could say that, because I was like, okay, I know what 2 hours feels like. I know what 3 hours feels like. Titanic, 3.5 hours, and I was like, oh shoot. But what I was really watching was like him playing his greatest hits. Like I saw little hints of Casino. I saw little hints of Goodfellas. I saw little hints of, everything that he's mastered over the years. It just came into this movie.
Well, I think something I love too is when you look. It's another reason why I pick him as my pick for greatest of all time is the diversity in his, kind of catalog of films.
Yeah.
And when you look at, you have movies like Aviator and Raging Bull, kind of character biodramas or biopic dramas. You have movies like, kind of Shutter Island and Cape Fear. You have movies like The Last Temptation of Christ and Silence, movies about his Christianity. You have so many movies about different things. But then you look at his most popular movies.
Yeah.
Goodfellas, Casino, and Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
What do all those movies have in common? They're fast-paced, they're narration, they're always using music, and they're just entertaining to watch. They have great acting, they're just fun. And here's the thing. He takes that concept from those three movies, because I don't think The Departed is actually like those three movies. I think it's sort of different. I love The Departed too. But I think he takes the ideas from those three movies and says, all right, I'm going to slow it down a little bit because I've got older actors. I'm going to lessen sort of the glorification, and I'm just going to give you what is going on, and you can take it how you want. And another thing that he does is he puts enough comedy in it so you never get disengaged and you're always focused. Because a movie like The Godfather 2 is like 3.5 hours too, I think, and The Godfather 1's about 3 hours. Both those movies are great, but they're just, a lot of people don't like them nowadays, which is crazy because they're fantastic. But a lot of people don't like them because of how slow and kind of quiet they can be. And, they're never as fun as, The Irishman or Goodfellas or Casino, because those movies are just so fast paced, but also like there's so much in them. There's so much content because they span decades of time. And it's really him unraveling just the story of America, the story of individuals, the characters. And it's really just comes to a head in this movie. And, I think the character of Frank Sheeran, the Irishman, is one of the best characters that Scorsese's ever done in a movie. It's probably the best Robert De Niro performance since, I don't know, I can't say right now, since the 90s, since one of his 90s movies. It is so fantastic. And I don't want to go too much into the character, but the way they expand his character, it's one of the most emotionally nuanced characters Scorsese's ever had on one of his films. And the final, 25, 30 minutes of the film are actually there's no whacking, there's not many jokes, it's sort of very kind of quiet and a thoughtful kind of reflection on what came before in the film. But I genuinely was a little sad for Frank. And, Frank's done some clearly bad stuff. And, for me to feel, I never really felt bad for Jake LaMotta and Raging Bull or, Jimmy Conway and the Goodfellas or Henry Hill or anything like that. But the fact that he makes his character so kind of just multi-layered and three-dimensional. It's one of the best characters. And it's one of De Niro, honestly, people might disagree, but I'm not just saying this because I like the movie. It might be one of De Niro's best performances in general. And for a guy with such an illustrious career, arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest actors of all time, for him to have one of the best performances at 76 years old, again, it takes immense talent.
Yeah. I'm just reminiscing about the movie. I'm trying hard not to say anything that can be a spoiler. And it's not, the actors just in general, for me, it's like a dream team. It really is. And it's I was looking at it and I was looking at everyone on screen. I'm like, wow, that's a dream team.
That's a dream. That's what I was saying. You look at their starting.
If you had one of those actors in your movie, you'd be like, excited. Oh my God, I'm set.
It's like when you're looking at a team starting five and you're like, this is the team we're playing. And then it's like, oh, and that's their bench. Ray Romano and Harvey Keitel. It's like, Jesus.
So I was pinching myself at times because I was just like this, but it's what he deserves. That's the thing. It shows that he's a master and he deserves have actors that are masters. I mean,
Pacino and De Niro have only been in 3 movies, really only 2 where they've interacted, which is Righteous Kill, which I've never seen. I've heard it's a very average movie. And then Heat, obviously, was a classic, but they're completely, they're enemies, directly kind of foils to each other. And for them to be in this movie, their chemistry is so electric, and it's just, it's the way they act together. It's truly fantastic. I'm trying to figure out more complex ways to articulate some of the things about in this movie, but it's just so good.
It's really interesting because they do have a different, it's not a different way, but they are different styles, and it's like ketchup and mustard, they both are good on a hot dog, but it's they have different ways of approaching.
Yeah. I mean, the scenes where they're just talking just made
different
me so
rhythms,
excited.
Different everything.
Yeah.
The way
And
it's
the thing about Scorsese is a great director like Scorsese knows what scripts to pick, because sometimes a director just doesn't want to write scripts, and Scorsese might just not like doing that. That's why he directs films where usually other people write the scripts, because he's more interested in the story and the characters, the direction, the visual storytelling, all those things, how they come together to make a full package. So for Scorsese to get Al Pacino in his movie, which he had never been in before, which is crazy in and of itself, I'm sure he was so excited to just film these scenes, but they were so electric. And De Niro is just fantastic with Pacino, and Pacino's fantastic with De Niro.
Yeah.
Pacino is the most entertaining character in this movie. His performance is getting the most acclaim. This is probably a hot take, but I do think De Niro has the best performance of the movie. It seems like most people are for Pacino. They both deserve to get nominated. I'd still probably pick maybe Phoenix is the best actor because, I think De Niro's best performance against Phoenix, De Niro wins. But, I don't know if, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. But for supporting actor, Pacino deserves a nomination. Pesci deserves a nomination, even though Defoe might still deserve. This is one of the best Oscar years in like decades. This is a fantastic year. Whoever wins is going to deserve it. But Pacino is just so funny, and he's always doing these speeches on solidarity.
Yeah.
And he's kind of this crazy larger than life figure, and he's just so funny. And there was a scene in this movie. I'm not going to spoil which one. You know what scene I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Where he's getting mad and stuff. Where I was literally bursting out in laughter because he just knows how to control his scene. And you could see from some of the bad movies he's done, like Dunkachino and Jack and Jill, he's pretty funny in a bad movie. So what's going to happen when he's funny in a good movie? Well, you're going to get a great film.
Yeah.
And he's just excellent in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, what else do you want to talk about? Because
Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci is not Tommy from Goodfellas or Nicky from Casino in this movie. He's not beating people up. He's not hot-headed and short-tempered. He's a lot more controlled, but he's just so likable. Just to see him even on screen. Oh, well, I mean, the de-aging in this movie too is really good.
Yeah,
I've heard it's pretty wonky. I don't know if I agree. I don't know if there's ever a scene besides maybe a couple of shots in the daylight where I was really not convinced that it like was them. Of course, your eye at the end of the day is going to tell you whenever there's any sort of visual effect in the movie. I don't know if cinema will ever get to the point where you can't tell because your eyes just aren't dialed to look at things that aren't what they're used to. But there were some times where I was genuinely impressed with just how good the de-aging looked, especially on Joe Pesci in some of the scenes. I was like, I was stunned. And he was fantastic. And his relationship with Frank and, Jimmy and all that, it was fantastic.
Yeah. The de-aging was good. It was very good. I noticed it at the very beginning. I did, to be completely honest. And then I forgot about it, which is great. And there are, as you said, there's always like in broad daylight. That's when it starts showing.
It's tough, I think, to get shadows. And
It's so hard. But I mean, I kind of like, I'm excited to see if like someone 20, 30 years from now that doesn't know or remember what Robert De Niro looked like younger, Joe Pesci looked like younger, they might actually see this and not have those limitations of like, oh, you have something to compare it to.
Because Pacino never gets de-aged because I'm assuming Jimmy Hoffa kind of was one of those people who just stayed kind of how they look. Yeah. But, the makeup, even like, I don't want to spoil too much, but they go through different points and they
go
show
through
Frank
different eras,
when he's older. And I'm pretty sure they did some sort of makeup to make De Niro look even older than, because De Niro's obviously pretty old in real life, but just the way that they like visually kind of adapt to the time and kind of transform with it is fantastic. But I think we should talk about the one, I guess, criticism I have is the cinematography in this movie is also, I think the screen we watched it on was like a little, I want to see it like, at home when Netflix, releases it. The cinematography a couple of times had like this sort of polish to it, or maybe it was like digital. I don't know, because he worked with Rodrigo Prieto, who worked on The Wolf of Wall Street and Silence. That's another great thing you can see from a director's career is how they advance with the people they work with. But I think this movie doesn't have as good cinematography as those two movies, but I do think there's some really good shots in this movie. I just think a couple times there was sort of a weird, did you know what I'm talking about? Like a weird thing.
I'm curious if they shot it on film or if they shot it on digital.
I think it was digital.
I think our projection was digital. So I'm curious because if they shot it on film, then they should have showed it on film.
Yeah.
But that might be the polish that you're.
Yeah. It was a little weird, but I mean the shots were really good. I mean, another cool thing is Thelma Schoonmaker, who's been editing Scorsese movies since like the 70s or maybe 80s. Like it was awesome to see her. She hasn't lost her time. It's just so cool when you can see these directors. Because a lot of people at 76, which is how old Martin Scorsese is, they can't walk. And they've like, kind of just done really nothing at that point. And this guy's making films. And, and even like Clint Eastwood is 90 and still making films. Like, that's so impressive to me that these people, because they probably are like making a film, being on a set is like second nature to them. It's just like just another day at the office. And it's so cool that we have these legends still making these films. And it just makes me so happy and excited to see them be a part of it. And just Scorsese, their whole crew is back. Steve Zalian, wrote the script for this movie. He's written like Schindler's List, Moneyball, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. He co-wrote Moneyball. So he's a really talented scriptwriter. The script for this movie is really good.
Yeah, it's
But what
very
makes
good.
the movie so good is how the actors deliver it, how convincingly they say the stuff. Because the thing about Scorsese movies is he's never had these wordy movies with these huge vocabularies and kind of like they've always been so simple but so blunt and effective in their words because of just how good his actors are. Because he never picks anything but the best actors to deliver his lines, and there's different directors have different types of visual and kind of dialogue styles in their films, and Scorsese just evolved. It's one of the reasons he's one of the best. He's a chameleon. He's constantly evolved his style and his direction and his just storytelling, and it's just it all comes to a halt in this movie to make a true masterpiece that shines through, and it goes through like 5 different decades, and it's really an exploration of time.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I appreciate about him most. He's like a great conductor.
Yes.
He knows all the sections, whether it's the violin section or the string section or the percussion section, and he just knows how to make them all for the greater good. The piece that they're doing, and that's what I loved about this movie.
I think some young people maybe might not like how like slow the movie is at points. I think there's 3 particular parts you can point out that like could probably have shaved off like 2 minutes from each. But at the end of the day, I'm just not going to sit here and complain about that because I think it's his choice because he likes making epics, and I love long films if they're justified. Like I hope one day they'll make like a 3-hour Star Wars movie because they got like the Lord of the Rings. But I love epics, that span.
I do too.
Epics, I think usually you find epics being the best film. I think pretty much all of the best films, I said pretty much because there's definitely exceptions, are usually above 2 hours.
Yeah.
They're usually like over 2 hours, 2 hours, 5 minutes. But this movie, it's like, even in those boring scenes, those slow scenes, like I just enjoyed soaking up every second
That's
of what
because
was
it's
on the
about
frame.
character. Yeah,
Exactly.
And when it's about character, you still are learning about the character. So it's not really. It's slower, but it's not boring because you're getting new information.
Yeah.
If you're by the right director, you're getting new information, and so that's why I enjoyed him.
I think something that was cool too is they shot De Niro like as he was taller, sort of the Ian McKellen Gandalf camera technique. Because I guess people always complain, but people online were complaining about Pacino getting cast and De Niro like, oh, they're not the right physical. I'm like, do you not want those people in a movie? What's wrong? Sometimes people just like to complain. A lot of the times, but like the way like. I don't care how they look because the way that they played these characters, they felt like real people. And this movie has 3 of these people's best performances. And again, for 3 actors with such illustrious careers, that's awesome to see. And I hope this movie gets recognized and is not thought of as a Netflix, because this is far and wide the best thing that's ever been released on Netflix.
Yeah.
And and I've heard Marriage Story is pretty good. Whatever else comes out, I don't know if there's ever going to be a better film released on Netflix than this. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, unless like everybody starts flocking to Netflix.
Yeah.
But this is just a truly great film, and there's a couple more things I want to talk about. I'll talk about in the spoiler review, or we probably won't do a spoiler. But like
we will.
when we do our best movies of the year list, I will certainly
Yeah.
guarantee this movie will be on mine. So I'll probably talk about some more scenes there. But there's just the movie's really funny, but it knows when to take itself seriously. The silence in this movie is great. The music choices, as always, for Scorsese are great. But there's less music, I think. It's more like sound effects.
Yeah.
There's kind of like this like one, I think, accordion or harmonica sound that's in a lot of the movie. But I just don't know what more. And one thing I love, too, is, like I said, it's not as glamorized as Wolf of Wall Street, Casino, or Goodfellas, because the kills happen quick. Things aren't as cool. They're not as colorful. It's not as fun. It's a little more placed in the real world. But because of that, you feel more like kind of, it feels more authentic, but you also feel like you're right next to these people living out through these decades. That's why the movie works as long as it is, because you feel like you're right next to these people. And a good director of a long movie has to know what they want their audience to feel. Because if you're making a film this long, you have to be like, well, what do I want to put my audience in as a setting? And I felt like I was friends with some of these people, for how great the performances and writing was. And there was one line, I don't want to spoil it, but it was a great line. One of the best movie lines.
Tell me off.
Yeah. So, I don't really know what else. I'm sure there's a couple things I'm forgetting. It's a long movie. There's a lot of scenes. But if I was to give this movie anything less than a 10, I'd be desecrating it. This movie is a 15 out of 10. It is an easy 10 for me. I don't care how slow those scenes are. This movie has nothing that I could criticize. Like I said, some of the digital. There was one scene where Robert De Niro beat somebody up. I was like, dude, I could tell this guy's 76. Like it was like, I think it was the motion was like sped up on the VFX. You know what scene I'm talking about? It's like his kicks looked a little weird. I'm glad they used mostly guns instead of fighting. But yeah, this movie's easy 10 for me. One of the best films in this year, maybe one of the best films of this decade. One of the best films of Scorsese's career, which is hard to say for a dude who's dropped masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece. And this is just one of those things where I feel like it's the final cherry on top of his career. This kind of ice cream sundae he's been building with all his brilliant films, and anything after now will be chocolate shaving. Good chocolate shaving, because he's Scorsese.
Yeah.
But I don't. I think this will probably be, one of his most celebrated. And I think this will only be a movie I like more as time goes on.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're definitely. Yeah, as I was saying earlier on, I was just really worried about you because we've been talking about Scorsese a lot this year.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let's not impress me because that's the wrong way to say it. I was just like, okay, which Marty are we getting here? And he's always been brilliant and I've always appreciated his knowledge and love for film. But this movie or this Irishman made me appreciate it even more. Just in terms of, it was a masterpiece for me. It was definitely a 10. I've given nothing higher than a 10 because I think 10's the pinnacle.
Well, I mean, I know
it's
from a numerical standpoint.
Yeah, symbolic. Yeah.
I mean, like I give Pulp Fiction like an 11, but
yeah,
you can only give it 10.
Yeah. But saying that, I think definitely, if there's one movie for me that someone would say, well, what should I watch from Martin Scorsese? It's hard to tell because there's so many great masterpieces.
And he goes into so many pockets.
He goes into so many pockets, but I can easily say you should see Irishman as well, and that would never be a wrong choice. So
and I think
definitely go see it.
For De Niro, I think only like Jake LaMotta has had this much of a development of a character, and which is probably his best performance. I mean, go see Raging Bull if you haven't seen it, but like he really just expands the character over time and gives different qualities. And he's quiet usually, and sometimes like one of the reasons Robert De Niro is a great actor is because he's not just a quiet. Any actor who's even just great at one thing cannot be called the greatest. De Niro can do. Watch the Raging Bull prison scene where he's like screaming his lungs out. But he's very quiet in this movie at times. But you can see a lot of acting through his eyes, and you feel bad for. And at the end of the movie, I was like, oh man, De Niro was ridiculous. Pacino was ridiculous. The script was ridiculous. What else isn't ridiculous in this movie? It's fantastic. It's a 20 out of 10. I don't care. Give it all the numbers.
You went even higher. Okay.
Yeah, this is a fantastic film. Please go see it. It's kind of tough to see right now because of these theaters. So wait for it to come out on Netflix or go see it in theaters. It's worth it. And I think everybody loved this film. And this has one of the best endings in any Scorsese movie too. And we'll discuss that more.
Yes.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and then let us know what your favorite Martin Scorsese movie is.
Ooh, yeah.
It's a tall order. I don't even know if I could say it right now off the top of my head. But yeah, this is a fantastic film. Let us know if you've seen it, what you thought of it, what your favorite scene or performance was, what your favorite Scorsese movie is. And do you think this movie will win any Oscars as well? And like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.